Anyway, second lesson. Welcome back. You have fun. Tell me what you remember about the previous thing we covered, so I just know like what I might need to patch in.
Oh Lord. Um, oh my God, we talked about so much.
Just
Fuck.
come on, like give me like a one paragraph response to that. Like, what do you remember? What were like important events that happened in the previous episode, or like important events we covered?
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot the names of some.
You don't need to name the characters. Just like what was like the big thing? Like who was the Silent King? What was the Silent King's name? Do you even remember that?
I don't remember the Silent King's name, but I do remember one of the factions like having a they
Having
have
a
like they have a they were they were immortal in a sense, whereas like
okay,
they
so okay. This is gonna be some recap of this episode. All right, so we covered the war in heaven. Long story
yeah,
short, Catan, Necron to your
yeah,
old ones getting a really big punch up. Uh,
Necrons and Picard.
yeah. Okay. So this we're gonna kind of pick up from where we left off with like the Necron situation, where the Necrons go to sleep because the galaxy's fucked, and essentially like they can't really fight new races. So today we're talking about the Eldar Empire, rise and fall, and then we're gonna kind of roll that into humanity's. This most of 40K is very humanity heavy because that's just the setting we're in. Where humans show up and we want to be in charge of everything. Uh, but no, so we're gonna roll into the next major event. This is 100% like one of the most important events in 40K, or at least like this time period. Anyway, so pretty much immediately after the war in heaven, the Eldar become like the dominant force in the galaxy. They got like they're really known for like having really good tech and also just like being like amazing psychers, and also just eventually they have like total galactic dominance. Like they literally we'll cover this like a little bit after this, but they pretty much were like the number one in the galaxy, and eventually they became known for like cruelty, hedonism, and excess, which that's important for later when we get to interesting stuff right before our third episode. Um, so pretty much, old ones are dead. Necrons go into sleep. Eldar become I just have written Eldar become condescending assholes. Um, essentially, whatever happened. Initially, for like a while, they kind of just like lived amongst the other races. Well, they haven't fully expanded yet, but they're like really adept as psychers. They're very intelligent and like inclined toward technology, so they're advancing a lot faster than these other races. And much like elves in fantasy, they kind of start to do that like hoity-toity, I live for a really long time and I'm smarter than you, looking down their nose at you situation. That, and they're
Yeah.
also way taller than the average human because they're elf people. Uh, so you know. But anyway, do you remember how like the old ones blew up all those warp gates and now the webway is like a labyrinth kinda?
Yes, the old one. So the old ones blew up the gate.
Yeah, but they didn't like blow all of them up, so now there's still like webway intact. So now the Eldar, like they master that webway or like the new paths of the webway now, and they're the only ones who can navigate it. So now they're using that to just like hyper expand across the galaxy. And so that it eventually they just get like to the point where they don't need physical labor. Like there's nobody who works in like factories, there's nobody who works on farms or anything like that. Like all basic level needs are done by like automation, and that includes war at this point, I'm pretty sure. So they aren't even like going out to fight. They're just like they're dominating the galaxy so hard that pretty much just like life's really good. Ugh, stop, Oliver. Okay. Um, the downside of that is when you had like when life goes really well, a lot like most sentient creatures that we know of, people will immediately try and fuck it up because they don't like it. Uh, but we'll get to that down the road a little further. They did a bunch of these things called like paradise worlds, which is like the opposite of a death world. Uh, it's just a really nice planet that you hang out on, and typically a lot of people who go there, well, in the Imperium anyway, are super rich and don't have to do anything to like, earn money or want to live peacefully.
A
Uh,
very utopian.
yeah, very, very utopian kind of like everyone's needs are taken care of, everything you could ever want is fulfilled. You know, this is what life is now.
Okay.
Uh, Downside is that like a lot of people don't have purpose anymore because when everything is done for you, much like when you see like those videos of like billionaire kids who don't have like a single fragment of personality, it's like, yeah, because you've never struggled in general. And so you just like start doing shit to do shit. And for the
Yeah.
Eldar, that translated to doing like a lot of drugs and sex and homicide.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, and so like there'd be like murder circuses, for example, or at least that's like the best way I could describe them. Uh, where it's a circus, it's like a traveling circus, and they'll like kill people in front of you. They'll like pick volunteers from the crowd and kill them. And you might think like, hey, that's like a really big deal. Like, what the hell is that? Turns out, Eldar are so adept as psychers that when they die and their soul goes to the warp, they can coalesce their soul back together and respawn.
And this is the Eldar, right?
Yeah, these are the Eldar. This is just what they're all about. Um, mind
They can
you,
will their soul back together
yeah, like
after they die.
yeah, after they die and like their soul goes to the warp, they can pull it all back into itself, which is like really powerful, just in general. And also, I don't know how the old ones can do that, but I imagine that the enslavers were probably a bigger problem at that time period. But also, they don't explain like when the enslavers just leave. But I guess at some point they just left after all the old ones died, and then the Eldar did their thing. Anyway, don't get too
How
focused on
can
that
the
part of the.
Eldar do that? Is it do they just have a really strong will to survive?
That and like they're just super psychically attuned. Imagine like the warp is like an ocean, and like me and you like regular people think of it as like a cup of water in that ocean, versus like a psyker might be like a bucket, and depending on how powerful a psyker, it might be like a steam engine's worth of water. You're not entirely sure. The just Eldar are very adept psychers, and they're very powerful, so they're like capable of picking themselves out. Like they don't just do like that like like recoalescence thing. Like they can scry the future using the warp. Like they can do weird magical shenanigans. Uh, like there's like witch covens in Drukar, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But just like this is just like a psychic prowess thing, not so much like a they're just like us, where it's like when we don't really have like a concept of how to interpret death if we die, or at least I'm assuming this is kind of how it works. Like if we die, that's it for us in our mind. But for like Eldar, they die and they're like, oh, well, like I know the warp's a thing. I know my soul's very strong. I can just pull my soul back together, and I'll be fine. Which like I don't know if a human's ever done that other than like a perpetual. Like perpetuals respawn, but I don't think it's like soul nonsense. I think it's something else. If I ever figure it out, we'll do an episode on perpetuals. Um, but like no, it's just Eldar really. I guess Eldar are just really talented is all I can really say to that. I don't know. I guess the old ones never technically died from like old age, and I guess they never needed to know that. So when they died, they just died. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are in retrospect. This doesn't. It's just kind of a thing that Eldar do. Um, but yeah. So eventually, the whole murder circus, pleasure cult, and like when I mean like pleasure cult, I don't mean like the local BDSM club. I mean like sex, drugs, and rock and roll are literally their religion, and they are like worshiping it. They're having people like flay themselves alive. You know, people are people are banging in the flayed skin. They might be getting flayed while they're banging. They might be having their instrument that they use for banging being flayed. Who knows? There's so many horrible things that could be happening, but this is just know that things seem to have gotten really bad. Now, do you remember how the warp works?
Um, the word. I might need a refresher on that.
So remember when I told
I
you how the warp can be heavily affected by emotions, and remember when the realm of chaos didn't exist?
yes.
Do you remember why the realm of chaos began to exist? War in heaven.
Uh, didn't the let me see. Didn't the Necrons do something to it?
No, they committed planetary genocide, and all the fearful souls that went into the warp started to affect it.
The Necrons committed planetary genocide,
Yeah,
thus causing those souls to.
yeah. When they die and go screaming into the warp before the Catan eat them, uh, they go in fear and terror, and that messed with the warp. And then you got a lot of demon problems, and now you go from this realm of spirits to the warp. Now, if that's how it works, what do you think's happening when these Eldar die in these horrible ways for sexual gratification? Which that's actually pretty much what it was. It was having
Um,
it's like slit my throat, and then as they slit your throat, you like nut all over the floor. Uh, I don't know. I'm glad that this I have no intention of this becoming monetized anytime soon. Um, but but no, it's like that situation where these people are going in there and like feeling like really deep amounts of like decadence and joy and pleasure, and you know
it's
how it really
probably
messed up the
amplifying the negative emotions once they enter the warp.
right, and it's happening repeatedly, constantly throughout this Eldar empire, and we're gonna come back to why that's important later. For other thing, some Eldar looked at that and were like, "I'm not down with this anymore." It's like it was really cool to like having all my needs taken care of, but like everybody's banging everybody. There's drugs everywhere. I'm pretty sure I watched some guy murder someone for fun yesterday, and I don't remember this being like the lives we wanted to live. And so then you get like two kinds of Eldar who just kind of dip. Where you get like the Exodite Eldars who they go back to like primitive like level of living where they move to like a regular planet that just has like it might be it's usually a pretty good planet where it has like plants and animals, but like Earth before industrialization and people, uh, you know, but they live like kind of among it like primal, like they have like dinosaurs that they can mount in combat, and they still have lasers, but like they don't use like any Eldar technology, and they just kind of they exist and they like vibe out like that pretty much. And then there are the Craft World Eldar who said, "No, we're leaving." They got on these giant uh continent-sized ships pretty much, and they just float through the galaxy on their little craft world. And that's pretty much it. Uh we're also going to come back to why that those two are important later. Um so, fun fact, learning about this part of the Eldar lore that I was looking into, it turns out you're not just going to learn about that, you're going to have to learn about gods too, so we're flip-flopping over to mythology because the war in heaven that the Necrons talk about and with the katana and everything. There's also a war in heaven in Eldar mythos, which no one's really sure if one's based off the other, but this is where we're at. Uh,
This is the second war in heaven.
no, I don't know. I'm not sure. It could be Okay, the thing about
Is
this is
this
that
another war in heaven happening with
the
the Eldar?
no, the thing is that this is like Eldar mythology, so it's not necessarily confirmed as like their real existence because then it would be contradictory because it's like, oh, did the old ones make the Eldar or do they descend from their own gods like they say they do? Which I'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's like lore muddled waters situation where it's like they haven't really ironed this one out all the way, but it's like generally assumed by most people in the community that the old ones made the Eldar. And so, therefore, a lot of their mythology is probably referencing the old ones and the Catan, but they don't
Mm.
actually know them. So they kind of made the old ones as depictions of gods in their mind and who were the first ones brought up by the old ones, whatever. But anyway, just the whole thing. We're not even at the lore part of the religion yet. So just let me get into that. All right. So first things first, let's talk gods. Uh, most of the Eldar gods are dead now. Uh, Number one thing, there's this new one called Aeneid. Aeneid is not a full-fledged Eldar god, I don't think yet. Uh, she's the Eldar god of death, I'm pretty sure, and she's being reborn from the dead souls of the Eldar that have been eaten by Slanesh, which I'll get into that later. Just know that Slanesh eats a lot of Eldar. Slanesh really likes to eat Eldar. Um, and so that's a thing that happens, I guess. But Aeneid's not like one of the original Eldar gods, like in the warp. So just know that she's kind of a new thing. So when I bring up these next gods and what happens to them, that's why she's not there. Um. So anyway, Eldar respawn times. Like this was something I brought up earlier. The whole bring their soul together in the warp. Part of that explanation is how they're able to do that is that they had their own little section of the warp with their gods in it that are separate from the chaos gods, and they had their own little section of the warp where they could still kind of go in, bring their soul together, go back out after talking to their god. And their god, like, they have like pretty open flow of communication right now between each other, like between the gods and their acolytes, which is
Mm-hmm.
another big thing why worship is important in 40k, because if you could literally shake hands with Kratos or something, you'd probably worship Greek gods a lot more. Like if Ares came up and said, I will literally just make you functionally immortal as long as you worship me and give you the power to do the same thing to other people, you'd probably be like, yeah. It's like, I'm okay with that. Anyway,
Probably, yeah.
anyway, the first two we're going to cover is one called Isha and one called Cornus. Cornus? Kurnous. I'm not going to be able to say a lot of these names. Uh, so apparently all Eldar in their mythos, or just assume everything that I talk about with involving gods in this episode is just mythology from Eldar. Um, I'm just going to say personally that I believe that the old one situation is what actually happened, and that their mythology is just an interpretation of that because they just didn't have a very good memory of it, and also all the old ones were dead. So, memory fade over time. Uh, and so Isha, Kronos, they get married. Uh, kinda. Gods don't really get married. But they have children, and their children are the Eldar, which the first two are Eldanish and Olthanish, and literally Elda Nesh. Very creative name, I know. Uh,
And
what?
Alden.
Eldanish. Eldanish the Eldar,
Okay.
yes.
And then what was the other sibling named?
Olthanish.
Okay.
But Eldanish the Eldar, that's a great, very creative name. Excellent name.
El-
Anyway,
and they are the siblings of.
they're the children of Isha and Cornus. Cornus. I'm not gonna be able to say that name this entire episode. But
eh,
yeah,
Cor-
they're the first Eldar ever born. Uh, Eldanish becomes the leader, and with the support of his brother Ultanish. All the other Eldar eventually come about. They build an empire, and everything's pretty Gucci for a while. Each of the Eldar gods gives them gifts. So the god Assyrian gave them wisdom. Isha gave them love. Vol gave them artifice. Uh, Lilith gave them joy. Kronos gave them desire. Morai Heg, yeah, gave them foresight, and Cain gave them anger. And you may wonder how anger is a gift. And
These are primordial. These are primordial, like
no, these are Eldar gods. These are not like the primordial chaos gods that are like at one with it. These guys can die.
Yeah, but if you're giving someone, but if you're giving them wisdom, love, artifice, joy, anger, I would presume that these are primordial level concepts. Like,
No, they're specifically
I
just
mean,
attached to the
can't
Eldar, not to the galaxy at large.
but you can't quantify like giving it someone anger
Well,
because
imagine.
anger is
Well, I mean,
gonna sound
holy. Imagine it like this: like Cain is the Eldar representative of anger and war, right? Corn
okay.
is the representative of anger. Period. So
Well,
it's like the
these are
Eldar
gods.
concept versus the actual concept. So it's
Hmm.
like I don't
I'm
know.
trying to wrap
It's
my
weird to
head
think.
around how to
Well, I mean,
literally.
imagine it like denominations of Christianity where they all have like the different ideas of how God works. So they all have their own version of God, but there's also just a God, and the a God is way more important than their individual versions
Yeah, but how do you relate that to anger and desire?
because they are the gods of those things, but they are not like the actual representation linchpin of that thing. They're just the Eldar's interpretation of it. It's like if humanity believed hard enough, we could have our own variant of like gods. Because that's just how the warp works. The warp just like is if you believe something hard enough, it spawns in. Like that's why the Eldar gods are, well, they're specifically the Eldar gods. They're not like
Yeah.
no, like Korn is known as like a chaos god and is literally just the lord of like hatred, slaughter, and anger. That's he covers that full scope. Like by worshiping Cain, you also feed Korn, but by worshiping Korn, you don't feed Cain. Cain is like a subsidiary of him. He's the Walmart brand of what Korn is. Which a lot of Eldar fans are gonna hate me for saying that, but
Oh Lord.
fuck it, I don't care. I think Kane's just like Eldar. He's just Eldar Korn, but like way more unreasonable somehow. But anyway, yeah. During this time, like people can just kind of go back and forth with their gods and talk whenever they want, and that's really dope. Uh, and then we get to like something pretty bad. So Cain is like, the god of like anger and war, right? So usually the best idea is to keep that guy as calm as possible. That way he doesn't decide that he wants to be angry and do war in your general direction. And the thing is that's fine until like you get accused of something that you can't really deny because it hasn't happened yet, which is essentially Lilith, the Eldar god of foresight, has a dream that the Eldar will kill Cain. Like the Eldar are going to do something that will end up killing Cain, and Cain is like, can't have that. And so he immediately starts killing as many Eldar as he can. Uh, and he's like just really going to town, killing these Eldar to the point where like Isha's crying and Isha's like, "This isn't fair. I don't want." Because I mean, to be fair, the Eldar are her children, literally. So she's like, "No, I love my kids. Stop killing my kids." Uh, Osirian goes like, "You know what? It's pretty valid that you're upset about your kids dying, and I'm gonna." And also, I just think maybe Cain is crashing out a little too hard today. So he drops down a barrier, and now the Eldar and the Eldar gods are no longer allowed to interact. It's just not allowed anymore. That way, Cain can't kill them, but also that means that Isha and them can't talk to the Eldar. And Isha and her consort Kornos, they get really sad about this because they really want to see their kids again. And they go meet with the god Vol, the Smith god Vol. We brought him up earlier. He gave them artifice. And they're like, hey, we really miss like our kids. Can you help us find a way to talk to them without breaking the barrier? And Vol like kind of hems and haws, and he's like, he was like, yeah, I can do that for you. And he builds spirit stones, and spirit stones are also going to be very important for later. And are you there? Because you being very quiet. And
No, I'm here.
okay, because I get concerned that every now and then the audio cuts out, and I'm just talking to myself again. Um,
I'm here. I'm taking notes this time.
oh, he's got a notebook out. Just start making PowerPoints for it at this rate. He makes them the stones so they can talk to the Eldar in real space, and it's fine for a while. And then Kane catches them talking to the Eldar, and and Kane immediately tells on them. Like he finds out, and which is actually like pretty well thought out of Kane. Honestly, I thought he would have just attacked them, but no, he goes to Assyria and he's like, "Hey, they're breaking the fucking rule that you made. You should give them to me. I want them." And
Huh.
Assyrian's like, I, eh, I can't deny that because they did break the rule I made. I'm not very happy about it. Really, you don't want to just give them to you because you seem very not stable. Uh, it's like, and we don't really know what you're gonna do if we allow you to do that, but we're gonna have to anyway. So hopefully, I won't regret this decision. Uh, Kane then proceeds to spend all of his free time torturing them, like for
Who is
fun.
Kane portraying?
Isha and Kornos because he was given them because they broke a rule. Uh, and so he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna torture them, and it's gonna be fine
And why does he torture them?
because he's
Is
angry.
it,
Eh, That's the
well, what
only
mainly?
reason. That's the only reason. He's just upset.
So no, it's just because he's angry.
Yeah, there's no benefit to this for him at all. Eh, He's just upset. He's just really upset. That's it. um, any fucking way.
What in the world?
Kane is just a prime time tweaker. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think
No
there's ever been a
wonder.
moment where Kane was a calm and rational being for like longer than 10 seconds at a time.
Okay, so he's always been a hothead.
Hothead is an understatement. Holy, his friend had a dream, and he said you got killed in this dream, and he interpreted that as, yeah, I need to genocide an entire species.
Jesus.
That was like day one. He was not all there, and that was even worse because he's tweaked out now that they've been talking to them. Um. Anyway, Vol, and a lot of the other gods are kind of like, maybe Kane's taking this a little too far. We really don't like listening to Isha and Kronos scream into the long hours of the eternity that we're gonna live. It's very annoying, and I don't like it. We should maybe like get him to stop. And so
Okay.
Vol, the blacksmith god from earlier, goes like, "Hey, Kane, listen, man, I'm gonna make you a deal that you can't refuse. I'm gonna make you 100 swords in 1 year." You may go like, "What's so impressive about a sword?" Well, these aren't just any swords. These are swords made by Vol, the smith god, and it's a mortal with one of his swords could kill hundreds of mortals with mundane weapons. So these swords are the real deal. Like these are
So
these.
one of his swords can kill how many people?
If you had one of Vol's swords and you went up like, I don't know, like a good 3,000 people with regular weapons of varying size. Like, you probably kill most of them. I don't know if you'd win. You'd probably kill like a good 1,000 of them, especially if you're just doing really like wide arcing swings. But these are really good swords. Is basically the idea, and you know he's like and Kane's like, damn, 100 swords in a year? Are you sure? Because I'd really like that. I'd actually let him go if you did that. Uh, and so Vol makes a deal. He's really happy about it, but there's a problem. He gets to the end of the year. He's only got 99 swords made.
Oh shit.
And he doesn't want, which immediately voids the deal between Kane and Vol, which means that Kane gets to keep them. And he could, I mean, frankly, Kane could have probably just beaten him up and taken the swords, if he wanted to. But if Kane wouldn't be too bothered if he didn't have the swords anyway. He'd be like, well, you didn't complete your side of the deal. Oh well, yeah, you don't get my swords and you don't get Isha and Kronos. Get over it. Uh, and so, so Vol, in a really dumb idea, decides to sneak in just a regular mortal sword with the other 99 swords. And it works initially, where like Kane sees the swords and immediately he's like, "Damn, it's like, thanks, man. I really appreciate it." He doesn't even check all the swords. He's just like so excited to see all these swords made by Vol. He's like, "Go ahead, take Isha and Kronos. I'll let them go. You go wherever." And it's fine for a while until he finds out that one of the swords wasn't made by Vol.
How did he find out? Just he can just look at it?
Well, I mean,
Is there a certain
you can
insignia?
use it and figure it out.
So does Vol's swords just like shoot this arc wave that can
Well,
kill thousands of people, and
I
he
mean,
tries to
imagine it
use
like
that on the
this,
mortal
Holy.
sword?
Like, if you made a sword, that's probably great, but your sword is never going to be as good as the blacksmith who did it for 20 years before you, and his sword's never going to be as good as the blacksmith that did it for 40 years before he did. And it's kind of that
Yeah, but
situation, but instead of the blacksmith being only 40 years older, the blacksmith has existed since the dawn of your species.
what I'm thinking of is like, say 99 of Vol's swords were like Dark Moon Great Swords. And when you charge up Dark Moon Great Swords, you send arcs of energy. And I'm
I think you're
guessing.
overcomplicating it, where it's not like the sword has like special powers. It's just really, really well made. So like the mortal sword is gonna break way sooner than Vol's sword, especially if you're using it the way Kane is probably using it.
So you think he used all 99 and then he finally got to that 100th and
Holy, it
then
could
it broke?
probably take Kane a day to figure out which one is not working because he would just be throwing them around his room more than likely because he's constantly on crash out mode. They just get lucky some days and he's not crashing out because he just got done crashing out for a week and a half. And he's just on his recharge. What I'm saying is that these are just really well made swords. Also, there's like a random offshoot story that isn't heavily explained where all 99 of these swords were used in a war against the Necrons at one point, and because Vol slipped the fake sword in there, it broke and it caused the entire attack to fail and the Necrons just slaughtered the battalion. So
What?
Vol may have also just gotten a bunch of Eldar killed. Who knows?
So you're telling me that the Necrons were getting bodied and they were probably going to get wiped out if that 100th sword was going to be there, but because that 100th sword turned out to be a mortal sword, that was the opportunity that they needed to launch a full counterattack and
Something
win.
like that.
That's
My
insane.
assumption is what happened is that like they were like in really small squads because Eldar aren't very numerous. Well, they are now, but they're very like physically gifted. They can run in smaller squads and be fine. Like 3 Eldar can do the job of what 10 humans can do. So one guy dies in a group of 10, 9 people can make up for that. You only got a 10% loss on coverage. One guy dies in a group of 3, and now you've gone from 100% to 67% of what you had before. And so, like, I'm imagining that they got surrounded. They were able to block these Gauss rifle shots for a while until the Gauss rifle fucking vaporized the mortal sword. That guy died. The other two couldn't handle the rest of it, and then the rest of the Eldar just ended up getting swarmed slowly as like they moved from group to group. That's my best guess, but I have no clue. I didn't actually look up the full part of the story. There's just a random offshoot story about how Vol's sword may have caused a bunch of Eldar to die, and I think that's probably how he got busted if it wasn't just Kane flinging them around his room. Uh,
So how did Kane react?
Poorly. He did not take it very well. Because he found out, he gets really, really angry and declares war on Vol because essentially he's like, you welched on our deal, you lied to me, I want him back. And Vol was like, nah, I don't think so.
Oh. So he declares war on him. So what is it, like a 1v1?
No, a lot of gods get involved. A lot of them switch sides, except Assyrian. Assyrian's the only one who doesn't get involved. He just kind of watches. And he's like, I don't know how I feel about this. Uh, and then, oh, Oh yeah. Okay, I already brought up the one mortal sword might have fuck the Eldar, so not sure. That's just what I have written in the in the notes. I literally have written random
I literally,
sidebar. One mortal sword might have fucked the Eldar. Not sure.
I literally just wrote that down.
Who was it? Oh, okay. So this comes to the like the what I brought up earlier. That is what's also referred to as the war in heaven. Also, another random sidebar. Remember
Wait, what?
Mephetron the Catan? Mephetron the Catan. Mephetran. Remember him? The deceiver.
Yes, the deceiver. He's the one that damn, he messed with I don't remember who he messed with, but he messed with him just for the fuck of it.
Oh
Because he
yeah,
wanted to
no,
see
the
what
Necrons. He literally just he doomed an entire species for shits and giggles.
yes.
Yeah. But no. Uh, so remember the Jackal God thing I brought up about how the Jackal God may have been part of how they instigated the infighting.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So also the Jackal God might just be referring to the Deceiver. Nobody knows. They could be talking directly about a Catan, which if they are, then I'm really more inclined to believe the whole. Oh, it's just talking about the old war in heaven because clearly Mephetron is like one of their gods, and he's just like an asshole, which explains why all their other gods are kind of just assholes too. But then like,
What?
why would their gods help them if they were the Catan, and then just for the Catan to end up having to fight them later instead of just eating them? Like it doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, but like anyway, that's a thing. Think about that. I like that. That's gonna mess with you for a long time. Uh,
That the jackal god could be referring to the deceiver, but there's no
there's
proof
no
that confirms
There's
that.
no, there's nothing that can prove that this mythology is based on the OG war in heaven. But at the same time, there's nothing that can disprove that these are two entirely separate events with two entirely separate deities. Of one being
Ooh.
Mephetron, who is the star god, versus the Eldar Jekyll god, who's just an asshole and wanted to start infighting. And I guess he got Kegarak in on it and was like, "Yeah, I'll help you out. Yeah, sure, why not?" Uh, But nobody knows. There's no way to prove it. No one knows which side is telling the truth. Quite frankly, an Eldar could tell you the truth and you would still not believe them because their truth could just not make any goddamn sense to you because Eldar are just way more advanced than humans. And I'm getting into too much Eldar topic for Eldar episode and not enough about Eldar fall from grace god problems. Anyway, Vol, remember how that mortal sword thing happened? Well, Vol decides to finally make that 100th sword now. and he names the
for the
sword,
war.
Aneris.
So Vol makes the final sword, and he names it
Anaris, Aneris.
A-N.
I can hear you scribbling in your notepad.
A-N-I-R-S.
No,
N-A.
Anaris, Aneris.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
Why does he make the 100th sword?
because he's gonna 1v1 Kane now.
Oh my god. Finally, the 1v1.
Yeah, and he gets fucking bitched. Because believe it or not, being a blacksmith does not make you better than literally the war god. Like, could you
Because
like
he died.
imagine if Hermes was there and like Hermes decided I'm gonna fist fight, or not Hermes? Hephaestus goes, I'm gonna fist fight Ares, and he's gonna not put me in a wheelchair.
My lord.
And so, Vol gets fucking annihilated by Kane, and Anvil. Oh wait, uh, Anvil, uh, Anvil. Vol gets lashed to his anvil for like all of eternity. Like he's in a not great state. He's essentially being burned constantly on his forge. Uh, After losing, uh, Kane doesn't get the 100th sword because some guy named Falchu, who I don't even know who that is, fucking steals the sword and he brings it to Eldanish. Remember him? Remember Eldanish from earlier? One of the first Eldar ever, and apparently just really goaded with the sauce. Well, he's gonna get the sword now, and I can tell when I wrote these notes because this was late because I just have Eldanish versus Kane tonight on pay per view. Uh, but no, Eldanish fights Kane, and Kane also kills Eldanish, and then, because a mortal fighting a god is never gonna end well, and so he
Wait.
wait what? Wait what?
So he kills. Hold on. Wait. He kills him.
No. Remember
He kills Eldash?
when Vol lost the fist fight?
Yeah. Ball
So
loses the fist fight. So
he
then Kane kills Eldenash.
no. So one of Vol's followers named Falchu steals the sword, Aneris, and he runs it to Eldanish. And he's like, Eldanish, you gotta go stop Kane. Kane's tweaking out. And so Eldanish goes in, and he also 1v1s Kane, but he loses as well, and he dies.
Damn.
And so
Wait. What about Ulfanash? What happens to him?
he doesn't go. He's just doing whatever. He doesn't go. His Eldinus just goes to 1v1 Kane and then gets fucking annihilated. Like, oh,
That's insane.
I'm either assuming he just didn't call his brother and go like, "Hey man, I need help to go fight Kane," or was just like, "Well, there's only one sword that can wound Kane. What's the point in bringing two people?" It's like if you were wielding Excalibur and you brought me to fight the dragon with you. It's like, what am I gonna do? It's like, what am I gonna do? Like, it said only Excalibur can pierce its skin. What am I doing here? Like, you just brought me to die with you if you lose. Like, I don't want to be here.
Okay, so he killed. So, all right. So Eldenash dies.
Right.
In the one with Kane. Does this quench Kane's anger, or is he still mad?
Uh,
Oh shit.
I'm looking at my notes and I'm laughing because little part of it just says, "Guess what? Eldanish fucking loses." No. So essentially, Assyrian kind of has enough of this, and he's like, "All right, war's over. Fucking Kane won. Give it up." And Kane, for killing Eldanish, we're gonna make it so that your hands bleed forever. Uh, and Like not like there's like
What?
wounds in him, but like
Hands bleed
his
forever?
hands just like constantly drip with blood. Is like evidence that he's like a murderer. Uh, he's now known as like Kyla Mensha Kane, Khaeela space Mensha, which I have no idea if that's accurate. I have no idea if any of the names I've said up until this point have been accurate. Other than Kane, I'm pretty
What?
confident about Kane. Uh, but yeah, essentially Kane's not even really that bothered by it. He's like, all right, I'm done. I'll go home or whatever, and he's just kind of over it. Uh, and so anyway, that's what was up with the gods in their mythology up until that point. Snapping back to like current time or where we left off. Uh, remember those murder circuses I brought up situation thing?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's gathering in the warp, and which is normal for emotions, right? But there's also a downside of it seems to be coalescing. It seems to be like gathering up, which is not usually a good thing, because much like when a bunch of gas and space gets gathered up and turns into a star, it's like that in the warp, but instead of a star, you get something worse. And
Oh
so
my god.
eventually, enough of like all this decadence and excess stuff that they're doing gathers up, and well, do you remember which one of the Chaos Gods I told you was the youngest? Do you remember?
Um,
It's a 1 in 4 chance. I know you know all their names. It's a 1 in 4 chance. You guess right here.
and nope. Drawing a blank.
Come on. It starts with an S.
You know I'm gonna overthink it. It starts with an S.
It starts with an S. It starts with an S. It's the only one of the 4 Chaos Gods whose name starts with an S. Very big into pink and purple. Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Uh,
Come on.
hold on. I'm having a brain blast. I'm having a brain blast.
Oh.
Oh my god.
God, I did not bring you any water.
Wait. Is it Slanesh?
Oh, there's my boy. You did it. You did it. You did it. You'll be ready for the test in no time. Yeah, Slanesh. It's Slanesh. It's the day Slanesh is born. Holy.
Wait, he's born on the day that Kane's hand bleeds for eternity.
Unsure. Not a specified amount of time, but you're right. You guess that this is the day Slanesh is born because all that stuff is coalescing in the warp.
Oh shit.
And so Slanesh gets born, which is bad for many of the Eldar because many of them are participating in the shenanigans, and many of them who are participating in the shenanigans get their soul ripped out of their body and it gets eaten by Slanesh.
Oh my god.
And that's like a good 99% of the 95 to 99% of their population, holy. So they just experienced a major extinction event. I think one of the worst ones that ever happened on Earth only killed 88% of the species on the planet. Their entire species across the galaxy died in a day.
God. Holy shit.
Anyway, so Slanesh is a thing now, right? Can you guess what happens to the other Eldar gods upon meeting Slanesh?
Um, they have their souls eaten.
Most of them, yeah. There are 3 survivors of Slanesh fucking annihilating the Eldar pantheon. The 3 survivors are Kegarak, Isha, and Kane. Can you believe it?
Good for
Kane survives, kinda, in a way, not really. But Kegarak lives. Kegarak's so crammed into the goddamn webway that Slanesh couldn't get to him, and he's just near the Black Library. And Holy, you might ask yourself, hey, like though, like if the only Eldar who got away from Slanesh were Craft World Eldar and Exodite Eldar, then how do Dark Eldar come about? Like where are Drukhari from? Well, the thing is, Drukhari were in the Webway when Slanesh spawned in, which has a psychic barrier in there to protect you from the warp, which means Slanesh probably couldn't get a full hand on them and like grab their soul and pull them in, but Slanesh can Slanesh has got a hold, and if they don't do horrible things to other people, they'll slowly be consumed. They will physically die slowly over time without doing horrible, torturous acts to people. Because Slanesh will just eat their soul over time.
Oh my god.
Which don't feel that bad for the Drukhari. They're just kind of assholes. They're really into it. They don't feel bad for it. It's not like a "I'm sorry we have to do this to you" thing. It's like, well, this is my life now, I guess. It's like it might as well make the most of it, right? Which that would be the last thing I'd want to hear if the Drukhari ever arrived at my planet. If you hear a Drukhari say, "Man, this is gonna be such a great vacation," and you turn to look at your friend like, "Dude, we're gonna die. If we're lucky, we're gonna die."
How does Kane survive Slanesh?
Well, when Kane sees Slanesh, uh, Kane, does his natural reaction and tries to 1v1 Slanesh. And Slanesh, like, fucking body slams him, and it ends up shattering him into tons of fragments, like his soul. And those fragments become the avatars of Kane, which spend a lot of time in the lore getting killed by Space Marines.
So hold on. He takes his soul and shatters it into individual fragments,
Yeah, these
which
fragments are.
then then he's not only does that happen, but those fragments get bodied by Space Marines.
Yeah, like a lot of the
That
time, in
is
order to express like someone is like a really powerful psyker, or like this Space Marine chapter, like this group of the Space Marine chapter, so super duper tough and efficient that they took out an Avatar of Kane. And like Avatar of Kane is kind of one of those concepts in 40k that gets dunked on a lot because he's always used like that. It's like, oh, supposedly one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy gets bodied by like 10 dudes. He's supposed to be like way more intimidating, but no, he does just spend a lot of time getting murdered like that, which is bad. Now Isha ends up in somebody's cum jar. I'm not sure whose. Uh, it says that it's implied that okay, there's like two main situations about it, where one of them is that Slanesh decided to keep Isha as like a trophy because Isha was like beautiful because she's the Eldar goddess of the harvest, so she's got that whole fertility goddess thing happening. Uh, and so naturally, Slanesh should probably be into that. So it's like, oh, Slanesh keeps her and puts her in a cum jar. Uh, and then there's Nurgle, who sees Isha, and there's like kind of multiple things about it. Where either he's in love with Isha, and that's why he keeps her, or he loves her because she's a great test subject, and that's why he keeps her. One of the two. Nobody really knows. Either way, he sees Isha, is immediately smitten with her, vows to protect her from Slanesh, puts her in the cum jar, but instead of cum, it's disease now. And he now tests like all of his horrible poisons and poxes on her, and if he likes the result, he'll like give it to his demons, and if he doesn't like it, he'll drink it and throw it up back into his cauldron and try again. And it's said that Isha like whispers secretly the cures to these plagues to humanity, which if she is, she's really fucking bad at it. Because every time a Nurgle plague pops up, it seems like nobody has ever done medicine ever in 40k. So who knows? And I don't think they have. I think they just keep. I think they literally just try and pray the gay away, whatever demons you have. Uh,
Oh,
but like no, okay,
that's
what is it? I already brought up how Kegarak literally was just chilling in the webway, and that's how he survived. He's just like. He's like he hears like a boom from outside. He's like, "What the fuck was that?" Like, like I guess I'm fine. I don't know what the fuck that was though. Uh oh, so you know how like when I showed you that one map of 40K, like there were pockets where the warp was bleeding into real space.
Yes,
Do you remember like how at the center of that map that's called the Eye of Terror?
kind of.
Cool. Well, the center of the map is called the Eye of Terror. And well, I mean that should be pretty self-explanatory about it being a literal portal to hell. Uh but what ends up happening is that due to Slanesh being a thing and all those Eldar dying, uh the warp starts to bleed into reality. And so at first it was bad enough that when you died you could just go to the warp and you were already it was you when you died you were already in the realm of chaos. It's now worse because now the realm of chaos can get you in real life.
Oh my god.
You can now be in your home and a demon can just decide I'm gonna get you. Like I mean,
That is
if appropriate conditions are met. But the thing is, at the center of the Eldar Empire, where all the I'm assuming where all the worst debauchery was. Otherwise, it's really convenient that it chose this random place to spawn in. Uh, but yeah, at the center of that empire, the Eye of Terror like rips into reality, and it's like, it's not good.
definitely not good. I can only imagine what that event looked like in reality.
Yeah. The death of this species did send out a really crazy psychic scream across the warp, which, good news, that cleared up all the warp storms happening near the Earth, and now the Age of Strife is over. We're not covering the Age of Strife next, by the way. You're just going to have to know that that was a thing that was happening at this point. Uh, and so, those paradise worlds that the Eldar had?
Yeah.
Well, now there are these things called crone worlds, which I don't know if you know what a crone world is, but it's a world that is inhabited by a demon prince or a greater demon. So like all these planets that were like essentially just really big utopian areas to live are now inhabited by like some of the worst things in the known universe. It's like imagine like you walked into like a really nice 5-star restaurant and from like one point when you walked out you're in the middle of downtown Detroit and then you turn around it was a Popeyes. You went from like a really high class LA to welcome to Detroit, my guy. And that's it. This is where you live now. But no, after that, most of the Eldar are bordering on extinct. Remember those spirit stones that I brought up earlier?
Yeah.
So the thing about spirit stones is that not only could they talk to like their gods like that, but in order to prevent you, because eventually an Eldar will die from old age or war or whatever, but they will die eventually. Uh, and most Eldar that die instantly get eaten by Slanesh. You don't get a choice. It doesn't matter what you've done in life. Slanesh eats your soul unless you have a spirit stone nearby. And the spirit stone can like put your soul in it. And then you put that into like I forget what it's called in their big like craft world ships, but it's like a giant area where they keep all the soul stones and the soul is in there. And it's just like it helps power the ship. It's like a wraithbone column or something like that. Which you don't know what Wraithbone is. I'm not going to explain it to you today. You'll just have to learn that on a different day when we cover Eldar in the future. You'll just be confused for a really long time, and then the pieces will fall into place. And you're getting a test in 3 weeks, by the way. Uh, because right before we get to the Great Crusade, we're doing a test on every event up until now, and so far you've displayed that you're not going to do very good on the War in Heaven section.
Sounds about right.
um, But yeah, those warp stones stop. The soul stones are a thing that they use now to prevent from being eaten by Slanesh. Uh, then you get into like the Aeneid. They're the Inari. That's the Eldar that worship Aeneid. and Ennead is the death god, and those souls in the soul stones are supposedly creating this death god. I have no idea if that's true. I'm not really sure I care if it's true. Uh, it just sounds really cool that like a death god is being born, and when she's born, she's gonna kill Slanesh. Supposedly, maybe. We don't know yet. Also, there's a book in the Black Library. What's the Black Library? Well, Kegarak is the librarian of it. Who's Kegarak? He's the Eldar laughing god. Which, mind you, this was a species that was so like morally debased that it created Slanesh. So imagine what it must have found funny. And he's the god of that.
Damn.
So he's not like a very fun prank guy. He's like I trapped your soul in this Rubik's cube. You have 20 minutes to get it out.
Oh my
And he's
lord.
like, "Isn't it funny?" And then when you don't get it out and you die, he's gonna laugh and think it's really good. Like that's just the whole situation that's gonna come up. Uh, anyway, other than him, you get Harlequins, and Harlequins are they are servants of the Laughing God, and they have some pretty messed up stuff that we'll cover again on a different episode. There's a lot of cool stuff that I'm just gonna have to nix out of this, and you're just gonna have to deal with. Uh, but like we got up to Slanesh. Oh, Eldar in the present day are dying as a species very slowly. Uh,
Is
uh
that because of Slaanesh existence?
well, I mean, also 99% of their species dying all at once did that too. But also, like, it's very dangerous for them to reproduce because it's not like they can just bang and have kids because having sex pulls their soul to Slanesh and then they die. So they have to have like very sterile ways of having offspring. And also, the downside of that is that it takes a very long time to have these offspring. So you don't really repopulate so much as you just don't go down unless you end up in a war. And then if you end up in a war, you die. Like there's an Eldar craft world that got completely eaten by Tyranids.
What?
Yeah, it just got fucking obliterated by Tyranids. There's no more. That entire craft world's culture and people are dead now. They're dead. That's it. That's the whole thing. They're all dead, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. They're just gone. Most of the Eldar still are pretty like high and mighty because they call humans monk eyes, and you might ask yourself why, and it's because you can't just say monkey in a game. You can't just go like monkey, and it's like, that character's black.
Oh my god.
So you can't just say that. So they say monk eye. They don't really like humans or any other species for that matter. They kind of don't really like each other. They just seem to tolerate each other for the most part. They're very like hoity-toity assholes. They have a lot of pride, even though that they literally murder fuck to their species out of existence. So I really don't get why they don't feel more shame about it or have giga shame, because I certainly would. I wouldn't be able to go out in public if I murder fucked a god into existence and it killed like everyone I ever knew and loved. um, but beyond that, pretty much they just kind of roam around. They're corsairs. They're like pirates. Drukari are pirates too, but it's like being attacked by a privateer versus being attacked by like an actual pirate. A privateer probably is not going to skin you alive and throw you over the side of the ship. A Drukari is 100% gonna do that to you. They're gonna find you. You're gonna hope they kill you, and then worse things will happen to you. uh, And then I already covered Harlequins. But no, that's pretty much about everything that covers the Eldar. In terms of like their rise and fall and why everything's really bad for them now and why they're not dominant, even though they had some pretty crazy technology. Um, and now, like whenever they meet humans, they don't really like us, but they're like they acknowledge that it's like pretty much humanity's turn to rule the galaxy. But also they're like, you're not that different from us the way you behave. Like I'm surprised you haven't already spawned a chaos god in yourself. And usually
Joke
that,
song.
and usually many
Him?
humans respond to that with "How dare you talk to me like that, you foul creature." Other humans just immediately attempt to kill any Eldar they see on sight because the Imperium of Man are space Nazis. All right. uh,
Again, good lord.
but no, that's the whole thing. So, well, we're closing in. We're on the end of the episode here. Questions, comments, concerns, criteria.
Um, I'm just really surprised that shit, dude. I'm just really surprised that Slanesh. Not even Slanesh. I'm just surprised that Kane. Well, I mean,
Are you surprised
Kane.
that Kane was pretty much crashing out for literal millennia in a row?
I mean, not even that. I'm just kind of surprised that he didn't just get auto deleted by Slanesh. But I guess having your soul split into fragments to then be killed off by Space Marines is probably a worse fate.
I mean, especially for Kane. Kane's probably used to just dunking on him, and he's like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah, that's that's actually really crazy. Um, let's see. I have a whole page of notes. Um, is the warp still in present day?
Oh, oh my God,
Bleeding.
yes. Oh my holy, that map I showed you where the warp is bleeding into real space is current 40K. Did you see the giant swath cut through the middle?
Oh my god.
There's a whole thing that leads to that, which isn't going to be covered until a really long time from now, and you're just going to have to sit and wait.
Okay, my next question on the cover art, right?
Right.
Who's the main center for
Oh,
these
that's
handouts?
just some Eldar, probably like Archon. That's just like
So all of these
that's
are
just all what
Eldars.
they look like. They're all just dripped out like that. Even the flying guy right there, that's pretty normal for like their soldiers because these are like each Eldar is like an elite warrior, an artisan, all that stuff, just based on where just kind of that situation. They all walk like a specific path to be a certain way, right? And so
Right.
this whole thing is essentially just like, oh, like this guy's probably just like that guy up front is probably just a sorcerer. You have like, that guy on the far right, he's like a heavy weapons expert. You got your aerial trooper. You have the melee specialist, clearly, because he literally only has a
So
sword and is crouched like he's gonna sprint at you at Mach fuck. Uh,
dude is like an ARC trooper.
that arc trooper in the back, it's probably just like just another arms specialist. Probably a sharpshooter if I were to imagine anything. That might be like a sniper. I don't know what that is. I know what these are. I don't know what these are specifically. We'll get around to that when we get to the actual Eldari culture episode. We'll probably use the same image even. I have to find images for the video that I want to use as well, but that's going to be something I handle after this recording anyway. Um, but other than that, like any other questions you got, or any like I don't
Look
know.
back at my notes real quick.
Oh,
Um, what happens to Ulfanash? Because you mentioned that Eldenash gets bodied and Ulfanash just doesn't really try like to intervene. Does he go into hiding, or does he just?
he was probably on a craft world that left, or he's dead. One of the two.
Wow. So it's open to interpretation.
I mean, yeah, he was like not really super duper important like his brother.
So Slanesh is the youngest Chaos God. Oh, did all the other Chaos Gods just? Did they just approve of Slanesh like
No,
in his
Korn fucking
actions?
hates Slanesh.
So are the other Chaos Gods just not strong enough to deal with Slanesh, or do they just feel like having Slanesh do his own thing is more convenient to them?
They all hate each other and want to be the only Chaos God.
Okay, so they're all plotting for each other, pretty much.
The only one who's plotting is Zinch. Everybody else is just kind of attacking each other.
Yeah, but it seems like Slanesh has like a reach that the other Chaos Gods that I know of don't have. So I'm really curious as to why the
Well,
other Chaos
Slanesh
Gods.
did in fact eat her entire species worth of worship in one day. versus all these other guys who are just kind of getting constant worship all the time.
That's insane.
But
So Nash seems to be like a worse Kane.
um,
Is that a correct comparison?
no, Kane is much more like Corn. Slanesh is horny all the time. Like Slanesh just gets off on torturing people, man. Like that's why Corn and Slanesh hate each other because they are polar opposites. Corn would want you to kill 40 people as fast as you can, probably with a chainsaw. Well, Slanesh would rather you take like a toothpick and slowly peel the skin off somebody's body while wearing a gimp mask or something. Mhm.
Yeah, that's insane. Actually insane.
So, chewing gum. Uh,
That's all the questions that I have, honestly,
that's
out
everything.
of the note.
That's everything. All right. Can you guess what the next episode is gonna be, Holy?
Let's see if the warp already bled into reality. Slanesh is here, and everyone's lives are fucked. But we still have a long way to go before Space Marines and Tyranids. So, are the Chaos Gods trying to plot against each other? Question mark.
We are covering the realm of chaos, but they're not really doing anything at this point. They're just kind of existing. But we are going to cover the realm of chaos, and you're going to be very confused about a lot of things when we do that. But that's going to be for next episode. It'll be fun, I think.
Well, I mean, I'm still confused on the fact of how you can gift someone desire, rage, not desire, anger, and well, foresight's a little easy, but it's easier as a concept. But giving someone anger, desire as concepts kind of hard to understand because you can't really relate that to a physical manifestation. And the only example that I have where it's not a physical manifestation is God of War 3 when they talk about hope and how hope is not like a physical manifestation that's in Pandora's box. It's more so just like the concept. So
I would
that's
say think of it
kind
more
of
along the lines of like the Eldar had their own idea of what these concepts were, and thus their gods were created. But Slanesh is actually the true coalescence of those concepts. And so when Slanesh was born, Slanesh was able to destroy their gods because Slanesh is just like the full supremeness of what the Eldar are just all encompassing. So, those concepts are technically a part of Slanesh now, so Slanesh can just eat them. Except
man.
Kane, Kegarak, and Isha apparently. One because somebody ran interference with Isha, Kegarak because he said gone fishing and wasn't there for the meetup, and Kane because I guess he's just built different, but now he's like in a wheelchair.
Dang,
Built paraplegically.
that's crazy.
I don't know. But no, the only things like that are immune to death are demons most of the time, unless they get killed specifically by the Emperor's big flaming sword. Then they die for realsies forever. But we'll get
Wow.
into that because we're going to be doing an episode on Big E after we get done with the Realms of Chaos. So just be excited about that. But anyway, this is going to be the end of the episode. Uh, hope editing goes well on this because it's going to be all me again. And we're going to do that other recording session tomorrow. You ain't getting out of that.
Yes, tomorrow. I think it'll probably have to be a little later tomorrow
That's
Like, we
fine,
have
just as
to.
long as we can get it done tomorrow. We're gonna fall behind schedule. We're already behind schedule because I'm not gonna be able to get this done by today.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to say my morning is gonna be pretty busy. I have to wake up early, but hopefully, well, not even hopefully, but I should be good to record
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay. Good. Good. Just don't fuck it up like you did today. I'm on you. I'm watching you. um. But yeah, that'll be what's coming up. Anyway, if you, I have to actually do a real outro. It turns out for YouTube videos. I completely forgot that last time. But anyway, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, whatever the basic generic YouTuber stuff. Honestly, if you just like the video, like it. If you have any, if I did said anything wrong and you want to clarify it down in the comments, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you know, Lee, I want to see like favorite characters in the comments. Actually, I want to see like characters that maybe I can cover in future episodes when we do like a character section. We'll just cover like a bunch of super interesting characters. Might do that actually, just kind of during some modules, like people I deem important, but I don't know. That'll be something we'll decide up in the future. But yeah, end of the episode. Uh, I'm good. Yeah, do you have anything you want to say before we stop?
I'll see you in the next one.
Nice. Catch y'all later.